All right, and welcome to today's episode of Sports Business Insider. Usually we go on what went on last night, but Sean got stuck in a hurricane out there in Florida, you know, so we had to actually push the. He had like a couple of flight delays due to bad weather, but we went on ahead and pushed it on to tonight. So we're gonna get this out of the way before the Stanley Cup final comes on. How you doing there, Sean? Good to see you made it back home safe, man.
Yeah, everything's good after a little 26-hour delay. but
26 hours? That is
yeah,
insane.
yeah,
That
but
that
it's
is
good to be back in the hurricane capital. It's funny. Yeah, the storm was nowhere near where I live, but the connecting flight was coming in from where the storm was, and it was end of the show right there.
where in Florida were you at?
I'm in Orlando, about 3.5 hours north of where really the got hit heavy. I mean, there's a lot of flooding in Miami and Fort Lauderdale right now, so it's kind of crazy down there.
Oh, okay, man. Huh. Okay. Well, again, glad to see you made it back safe and everything. And before we get started, I just want to let everybody know that you are viewing us live on the Sideline Sports Network. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And also, the Sideline Sports Show is on the Believe Network. So find us on the Believe Network. That's BLEAV Network. And follow us on there. A couple of shows I like to run by real fast. Sideline Sports Show Tuesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Myself as a producer. Also got hosted by JV Ellis with commentators Dave DeRocher and John Shear. Ralph Esparza, the best odds maker on the planet, also is on the show as well. Top Rope Talk Mondays, 7 p.m. Eastern on Sideline Sports Network with myself and the wrestling professor himself, Billy Cruz. Also, Hot Talk has made its return after a few weeks with Dave DeRocha and the Legion of Booms on Walt Thurman III, Tuesdays at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time on the Sideline Sports Network. And, of course, the Gauntlet. Right now, we're on a little break. It's a little slow, and it's typically the slowest time of year for NFL news. So we're on a slight break, and we'll be back in August. More to come on that. We'll have some, of course, some new material for you. We'll also be bringing back the Gauntlet Presents Kicked Off, our weekly picks. So yes, definitely stay tuned for that. But while you're at it, while you're watching this, go ahead and follow us on all of those platforms. All right, so tonight we're going to touch a little bit on some 49ers players' contracts. So Brandon Ayuk, and to start this thing off, wide receiver Brandon Ayuk has reportedly turned down a $26 million annually contract. There was no word on the guaranteed money. So, Sean, if you like to start us off by touching on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because my guess is the agent floated that number out there. The Niners probably aren't going to float a rejected number out there, and obviously it's a leverage game at this point, and they're going to go back and forth a little bit, especially with Amron's number being a little bit higher than that. And I'm guessing that's the gauge for Ayuk right now, right? Because you can't compare him to Justin Jefferson right now. And statistically wise, him and Amron St. Brown are very close if you look at their 3 and 4 season totals. Honestly, Amron St. Brown's 3-year overall averages are a little better than Ayuk's 4-year overall averages. Now, granted, Ayuk's gone through some more quarterback changes than Amron St. Brown has. Amron St. Brown has some consistency there versus Ayuk going from Garoppolo to Lance back to Garoppolo, now to Brock Purdy, where he's really obviously started to shine the last year and a half. And I think that's probably what the Niners are using as an argument in terms of keeping the number, possibly under that 30 million range. They have cleared the space to do it, though. They had the June 1 Armstead designation with that cleared 17 million. They extended McCaffrey, which gave them $7.5 million of cap flexibility this year and next year. They extended Juwan Jennings, that gave them a little more cap flexibility. So they have the cap flexibility to give Ayuk 26 to 32 million annually. Their cap space right now is 32.7, so I don't see them going all the way up to that 32 number, giving themselves, some flexibility during the year for trades and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where the offer is right now, and like I said, it's some posturing. He held out of OTAs at this point. It sounds like he'll hold out at the beginning of minicamp or training camp if it's not done at that point. But the Niners have also, done this notoriously with guys that need to be extended and waited to the last minute to get them in the camp and signed them the day before, the day of. I believe they just did it with Nick Bosa a year or two ago. 2 days before camp or a day before camp, they inked his extension and made sure he was going to be on time.
Okay, and that was another thing that whenever Armstead signed to the Jaguars, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, yeah. So his release also, and keep in mind, everybody, they still have to pay Brock Purdy. So releasing Armstead actually freed up a lot, also because, of course, they foresaw this coming.
Yeah, and I think what's going to happen is, they're going to do this standoff a little bit more with Ayuk. I know there's a lot of trade chatter out there about, him possibly going. One of the most popular rumors is him to the Steelers. I don't actually see the Niners trading Brandon Ayuk. I think Deebo Samuel will be the one, but we'll touch on that more in a minute. He's got $14 million for his fifth-year option. I don't think he'll play on that fifth-year option. I think they'll reach a deal here soon. And like I said, I think similar to Bosa and Deebo Samuel a couple years ago, it'll be a couple days before camp when the Niners announce Brandon Ayuk's new deal. And I think you'll probably see it come in about 28, 29 million range, right under that number. But I think he'll get more guaranteed money than Amon St. Brown. I think that's, where Ayuk's value to the franchise come in is, he's going to be the number one wide receiver come 2025.
Okay, then. And it's worth noting because Deebo Samuels does have an injury history. We've brought that up on here before. So it's a lot of things with him to take into consideration before.
And a very large cap number. And like you mentioned, Brock Purdy's deal is coming up next year, the extension. Deebo's cap number is in that 28 to 30 range already. That is essentially the number they need for Brock Purdy. Now, obviously, trading him or cutting him, they're not going to get all of that back, right? There will be some dead money. But that is a huge chunk of what they can then shift over to Purdy's contract. And I think that's what you'll see happen. They'll sign Ayuk this year. They'll keep them both for this season. And in the offseason, they'll move Deebo Samuel probably for maybe a couple mid-round picks and get off his salary and give that chunk of change to Brock Purdy.
Yeah. Would they, so last question on this topic, would they need to restructure Bosa's contract in order to make some room?
So Bosa's contract is obviously pretty large. We talked about it last week with Justin Jefferson just passing him by 0.1 on the annual scale of 34.1 to 34.2. So that number is a large number. So it's difficult with Bosa, right? He's obviously the center point of that defensive line. He is a big part of that, defensive, front. But if he gets injured again, then is it easier to restructure the contract versus if he plays all 18 and has another outstanding year, how do you go to him and ask him to take a pay cut?
Right.
I think you would see them go to others first before they go to Bosa if he plays all 8, 17 and has another amazing season this year. I think a lot of Bosa depends on his injury. Kind of like Samuel. Even with the contract, he had an injury history before the extension. He tore his his knee 3 or 4 years ago in week 2 against the Jets.
Yeah.
And was out that whole season. He's missed a good chunk of time before that as well. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I could see if he gets hurt this season, they asking him to take a bit of a pay cut. But I think they'll look elsewhere first in terms of contract restructures before they look at maybe moving off of Bosa's number.
Yeah, no, totally understandable on that one. Whenever you have issue of being dinged up, these are the things that they look at because they have to gauge how much production they're going to get out of you. With that being said, one of the, quite possibly the most polarizing football game of all time, the Madden NFL series. We're going to touch a little bit on Madden NFL Cover Athlete compensation now. So every active player that gets placed in Madden gets a quote-unquote Madden check. If you want to elaborate a little bit more on that, Sean?
Yeah, so the Madden check has been around for a while now. We'll get into the amounts a little bit later, but it's for any player that's in the game. Any practice squad player also in the game gets, I think it's $1,000 if a practice squad player is in the game. But every player gets a little bit for their likeness being used in the game. Now, compared to the cover athlete who reportedly makes 7 figures, the players get a lot less. In 2017, when a new CBA was reached, the players were only getting about 17,000. That number was even less in 2018. Some high-profile players like Patrick Mahomes have come out and spoke out against, their agreement that the NFL has with the EA, saying obviously I think it's an easy argument for Mahomes to make. His name, image, and likeness is probably worth a whole lot more than $17,000. And this is something where EA and the NFL differ from NBA 2K, right? Like there is a group of players in NBA 2K that get a set amount, but superstars or players with more leverage have been and are allowed to negotiate with 2K for their likeness being used.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why the NFL has kind of locked the door on the players from negotiating with the EA separately. But that's the way it's been for many years. And obviously, with name, image, and likeness continuing to be at the forefront, not only at college sports, but now at any sporting level, this is a big deal, right? And even now, you have, like I said, you have major players in the NFL coming out and saying, my name, image, and likeness is worth a whole lot more than the Madden check I get if I'm not on the cover.
And I seen in the notes that they made note that NBA 2K players get paid more for being in the game than NFL players. I'm gonna play devil's advocate here, and the reason it'd be a little bit more simpler than most, and that is, well, there's just more NFL teams and more NFL players. There's 32 teams in the NFL compared to 30 for the NBA. There's a 52-man roster for an NFL team versus what, a 15-man roster for the NBA. So
Yep.
It's a little easier, to get more money when there's less people.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think the one thing I think the NFL could adapt from the NBA's deal with 2K is you can assign a pool of players, say, hey, this part of the 53, yeah, they can just be in this bulk, get this Madden check for just being used because it would be their only marketing deal if not for Madden, right? But for these other guys like Patrick Mahomes, let's even just say the guy who recently signed his contract about 25 minutes ago, Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy, should they not be allowed, like Reggie Miller, Michael Jordan, even the current players, Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, and others, to negotiate their own name, image, and likeness value? And again, because they obviously have a lot more marketing deals, it's a lot easier for them to say, hey, look, I'm worth more than this 17 to 20,000 you're giving me in the Madden check.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And then one thing that wasn't mentioned on there. What about for MLB The Show? Where do those guys get paid?
I have not dug too much into the MLB's deal with the show. I know it's changed recently where, the show just went multi-platform about 4 years ago. So I wonder what impact that had for the MLB players. The MLB, like the NFL, does have group marketing, so I'm sure that it is a similar structure. The NBA, again, has a lot more individualism to their CBA in terms of your ability to market yourself and go outside of the group marketing aspects. And again, I think that's the one difference, at least for in this aspect, that the NBA has a little bit of a difference in terms of giving their players a little more leverage. But that is something we can definitely dig into and make sure we finish covering up on what the MLB does at the top of the show next week.
Actually, that'd be really great. And well, that's pretty much all that we have, ladies and gentlemen. But definitely next week we could tap into MLB The Show, and we'll also touch into to T Law. So T Law, just to let everybody know, he just got what was it? Was it 5 years, 275 million?
5 years, 275, and he has now eclipsed the record set by Justin Jefferson just a few days ago. We now have a new NFL's highest contract. And we'll wait for the next one in another week or two for whoever signs the next one.
Yeah, he passed Burrow in the process too, as what was it, his highest paid.
The only other quarterback to have 200 million guaranteed.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We will touch on that one next week. But for Sean Rossi, I am Denzel Snipes. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Sports Business Insider. We will see you all next week.